So, Don, Tom, I want to talk more about Labo VR. I've been playing this game, or I've been playing with it over the past week. Don, you have been as well. And Tom, you actually came down to my place in order to help me out record footage for it, and as a result, played a whole bunch of it yourself as well, right?
Yep, sure did. I loved looking into a bird's butt.
Who doesn't? That really should be the marketing campaign. So we posted. So I already posted our review a couple days ago. I said I loved it. Yep. I had a really good time with it. So I thought it'd be fun to get together and give our overall thoughts on Labo VR and where we think the platform might be going in the future and what else we want to see with it. So to get things started, let's just give our overall impressions of Labo VR. I kind of already talked about myself. So Don, what did you think overall?
I really loved it. Initially, before I got it in, I was sort of worried where the image quality would end up, because especially with other VR places like simple VR, like cardboard VR, a phone screen is fine, but like the Switch screen has lower pixel density, so I was sort of worried in that specific sense. But once I start using it and start playing the games, no matter if I was using the various Toy-Con or just the goggles by itself, I was just immediately blown away by how just fun everything was. Like that, everything has a fun art style to it. Like the 10 main games in the plain menu are incredibly rich, and on top of that, like there's a bunch of stuff you can do with the various tools they have in place there. So overall, I was just blown away by it. Easily like the most feature complete Labo set by a long mile.
Oh, it totally is. I absolutely agree with that. They really added a lot more value and replay value to this kit versus the others. How about you, Tom? Do you agree with Don's assessment, or how did you feel about it?
Well, with me, I haven't actually tried Labo before this, but I have tried different VR devices.
Oh!
Yeah, so I was more going in there comparing it to other VR headsets, and I thought, this is going to be a low-end one. It's just using the Switch, which isn't as powerful. It's probably not going to be any good.
Right.
So I kind of went in with low expectations. But, I should have thought, Nintendo is kind of a master at making low-end hardware make great, I can put in quotes, simple graphics, but they're maybe more cartoony graphics that look really good still. And perhaps it's more about doing that and having a higher frame rate. Either way, they managed to pull it off with Labo VR, so I was pretty impressed. And also the tracking with the, sort of using two Joy-Cons and the Switch itself, that worked really well too. It felt almost one-to-one for most of the time.
That's the wild thing, right? It's just how well it works as a VR device. Like, you look at it and you kind of expect one of those kid Viewmaster type things, right? But it feels like a legitimate experience when you look through the viewfinder. Granted, the goggles. It is the screen is lower resolution, but you can still see everything. The field of vision surprisingly wide, so it looks like you're mostly in this world. And then, as you said, Tom, the motion tracking, which combined with the Toy-Cons, the Toy-Cons are really part of the genius of what makes Labo VR work, because you're actually holding the same devices in real life as you're using in the game itself. So like when you're using the blaster, you see it, not only do you see it in the game, like, pump as you pump it yourself, you actually feel the blast as it shoots out. Or as a bird, you're flapping its wings, or as the elephant, you're controlling its trunk. Which, by the way, that elephant game is freaking mind-blowing how that works. But yeah, it's how Nintendo uses the technology in the Switch, combined with freaking cardboard toys, that it all comes together to work remarkably well.
Oh yeah, I think that the beauty of Labo VR is knowing Nintendo's strengths and knowing the hardware inside out, because there's a lot of pieces to that hardware, what the Joy-Cons can do in the system itself. So the tracking is mostly done by the goggles itself, so the Switch itself, because it has a gyroscope in it. And then the functions of the various Toy-Con are done by the separated Joy-Con in the Toy-Con. And that all makes together for something beautiful, especially, like you said, with the elephant game. Especially with the drawing, you can really go in and out the environment, and it's really, really fun to do.
Yeah, so in my review, one of the games I spent the least amount of time with, unfortunately, was specifically the marble, what's it called? The marble mode, the marble puzzle mode or whatever. We were using the elephant Toy-Con.
Marble Run.
Marble Run, thank you. And I actually spent a lot of time with it last night, and it only made me appreciate Labo VR even more than I already did. I'm like, this is remarkably precise. Like, with how you're able to maneuver these, contraptions with one-to-one precision relative to yourself. it still blows my mind that works at all. That you have this goofy trunk with two Joy-Cons plugged in, and it's what allows you to control this your hand in virtual space remarkably accurately.
Yeah, it almost feels like the trigger side of the elephant shouldn't work, but once you press it in with just a piece of cardboard going over the trigger, you're like, huh, okay.
Yeah, it's weird. And even with the HD rumble, how like when you block a gust of wind, you feel that wind come through the controller in the marble game, or even feel the marble roll along whatever surface it's on.
I must have been too immersed already to be noticing that, or I have no feeling in my hands anymore.
It's a little bit subtle at times, so...
Yeah. I was going to say the elephant one, though, was... the only time I noticed a problem trying to grab something was maybe at the extreme highs or lows, and, fittingly enough, it was trying to reach that very top button, I believe, for the elephant mode. Mm-hmm. That was the only one I had trouble with, but in the game itself, it worked great. Mm-hmm. Just reaching up higher.
Still, I mean, it really just kind of blows my mind like how well it works. But I've played a lot of other VR devices myself, including, as Tom can attest, like a lot of Vive at both like gaming shows, as well as one of our friends who has a pretty complete setup with like a room scale setup for Vive. I played with PSVR. Astrobot was my game of the year last year. And
that was my game of the year, so I loved it.
It was a great game, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, and again, it really shocked me how well Labo VR stands up. No, don't get me wrong, it doesn't have the exact same tracking capabilities of the others, such as it's only 3 degrees of freedom as opposed to 6. You can't like lean around corners or crouch down, for instance, to get closer to something. But what works is, the fact that Nintendo designed the experiences in Labo VR specifically within those constraints, again, with the magic of the Toy-Cons, is what makes everything work. Because you never really think too often to like, oh, I wish I could lean here. It's something that doesn't really occur to you, except maybe in that like painting game.
Right.
So, what was your overall favorite game in here of the 9 I think that are available?
I would say Bird Dash.
Bird Dash is so good.
Oh, I think we all agree on Bird Dash.
So basically, in the regular bird game, you flap around and hand birds or chicks various fruits spread out across the majority of the island. Mm-hmm. And once you go to specific areas, you need to go find a map, and that map also unlocks one of the courses in Bird Dash. And Bird Dash is basically the bird game on steroids, right, and very focused on going for rings.
Yeah, because I think you actually go faster in Bird Dash too. So I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, somewhat.
So, and you're flying through these like really tight areas, like through thin corridors. Like Tom, I was watching you when you were playing, and like I know I was doing the same thing too. Like you're leaning around, like you don't have to lean, but you're leaning everywhere because it just feels natural, right?
Yeah, it does, and I want to try to have every advantage I can to have a higher score than you, which I didn't do, of course, but
you tried.
I had to try.
It just basically feels like you're on a big roller coaster.
Yeah,
that's what it basically feels like. You are very constrained in where you need to go, but that constraint also makes it like you do very sudden movements and you just move all over the place, and I think that just makes it works about it just about more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of the reason why I think it feels like a roller coaster too is because of the freaking awesome wind pedal, where each time you press it, which in this game gives you a speed boost, or in the Frog game it makes you jump, top dodge. Every time you press it, it blows a gust of air at you. And what's hilarious is I set my sister up with it. She came over and had her try it out. And she didn't even realize that's what the wind pedal was doing. She started playing. She's like, whoa, where'd that gust of air come from? It felt real. And she thought it was just from me walking past her. And then when I told her, no, it's a pedal you just pressed, it kind of like blew her mind. She's like, what a silly solution that works so well.
Yeah, and that pedal, at first it doesn't look that big, but you compare it to the other pieces of Labo, and it's huge. Yeah, and as I was showing you, I looked it up, and actually having a light breeze on you while doing VR, it helps avoid any motion sickness, so it almost has two potential uses too. Like it probably is there so you feel better while using Labo VR.
That's kind of genius because the bird game probably is the one most likely to give you motion sickness too of all the games, I would think. Just because you're like flying all over the place, like you can twist and turn. And
I didn't really have it much with the bird game, to be honest, because the movements are more subtle and you are just looking around looking for the next egg. So I felt with Bird Dash, maybe that's why having the wind pedal there is a much better solution.
Right.
But just playing the bird game on itself, it's like it just felt very relaxing to play.
Yeah, it's a very laid-back experience. Which, by the way, did you finish it fully?
I did.
Okay,
yeah,
I won't spoil it. I kind of loved what happens at the end there. It's not. I don't overhype it. It's not a huge deal, but I kind of love.
No, it's not.
Yeah, but I kind of love what they did there. So, especially, let me put it this way: especially as a Disney fan, I really liked it.
They put a nice wrapper around it, which I really appreciate.
They did. All right, let's move on. That's Bird Dash. What's your second favorite game? We'll go top 3 here.
I mean, where do you said Bird? Bird is my second favorite.
Okay, Bird. Okay, all right, that makes it easy. I thought Bird was fun, but I also thought I got a little bit repetitive at times with having to hunt down like all the little things you can grab. But again, the end result was really cool. How about you, Tom? What was your second favorite that you played?
My second favorite, I'm torn here, but looking back for the one that's most like a game, I'll go with the Hippos.
Oh, the
Oko Blaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
AKA it's fun.
Hungry Hippos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That game is surprising, but it looks like a very simple game. We're just shooting through the hippos, but there's actually a decent amount of strategy to it. Strategy and skill with aiming and figuring out which fruit to use, but they each have different properties and which hippos to feed.
Yeah, there was a ton of strategy and tactics in it, I would say.
Once you shoot it where the hippo, some hippos will move other hippos with them, so you score additional points. So at one point, I easily got like 3 points with 2 hippos just sitting around the area where they need to go. So that was super effective and fun.
There's more risk versus reward, because you can go for a hippo further back, and if you actually hit it in the smaller target, they might push 3 hippos towards you to your area where you collect points. And then you also have the choice of going after the other player's hippos, because their kind of points area is right beside you. So if it's close, you can just go for their hippos. You can also use that whistle to turn hippos around so they're harder for the other player to eat fruit or easier for you. So there's a ton of different strategies in that game.
You also need to realize that only certain hippos will have their mouth open. So so you need to also preserve that strategy there and know which hippos they hit within the range that you can do during that specific turn.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it's a surprisingly deep mode. I just wish one of the shortcomings of Labo VR is that only one person can see the screen at a time. So I wish they found some way to have allowed. Well, I mean, I know they couldn't really. Here's what they could have done actually. I wish they had local multiplayer support with multiple Labo kits, so both Tom and I could be in the same world, like shooting the food at the hippos. Yeah. So
that's why I actually used the screen holder. I said as much as in my very long article on it, that I preferred playing Kablasta with the screen holder instead of the VR goggles. Because so the other player could see what I was doing with my moves.
Right. You know what they should have done? They should have had an instant replay. So when I hand it over to Tom, for instance, he sees what I did. So
yeah, that would have been also a good option.
Yeah,
even
but
like
still,
a fast forward one.
Yeah, exactly. But my personal second favorite, I think, would be the other Blaster game, being Blaster. I just loved how fun it was to go through this environment where you're on a track, you're automatically moving. If you look down, you can see you're actually riding in a tank. And you use a blaster to pump it up and shoot these grenades at the aliens invading the city. And what's really cool is, for one, again, how you feel that shot with how well that Toy-Con works, where you actually feel a physical impact. And then it has a cool slow motion feature where you enter basically bullet time. You can fire almost as many shots as you want. Then you go back to normal time, and they all shoot out at once. It's just amazing. And what I really like about this mode is, perhaps more than most of the others, is it really sells you on being here. Like, it had a fantastic sense of presence, which is something I'll probably be saying a few times, especially in those boss battles. Those boss battles are intimidating when the crab jumps at you, or that flying eel thing flies at you, and it just looks ginormous. And yeah, I just felt like I was there, especially wearing headphones. I can hear the screams of these creatures. Like, it's surprising how well it worked. It actually reminded me of the boss fights a little bit in Astrobot, which were also fantastic.
Yeah, that's very much a good comparison. I feel that, especially with Blaster, once you are in the zone and know where everything is, so I went through those levels like 3 times now, because I just have a good time playing through them. you try to go in your swivel chair and just try to go for every single one as soon as you can.
Yep.
So now I have a very range shot where I know where the next one is, so I just already set it put up, load it in, and then shoot at it. So I immediately go from back to back to back to back, and that's immensely satisfying to do.
And swivel chair, you've got the right strategy there to make it way easier. That was our hack, I guess, using the swivel chair instead of standing, or swiveling on like a little tiny foldable camping stool that might collapse in on itself at any time.
Yeah, indeed.
I have a quick question about the crab alien blaster game. In that one, were the bosses later on, could they actually hurt you, or is it always time-based?
No, neither, because they are not time-based and they cannot technically hurt you, I think. The bosses are based on your time at the end, but they are not timed themselves. So, depending on how quickly you beat them, that's how many points you get.
It is kind of funny, actually, that it's something I never really even thought about, but you're not really in any danger beyond time. It is just about shooting enemies. You have to worry about them shooting you or anything. And yet it still feels like an intense experience, again, with how well Nintendo designed these experiences. And I think probably part of the reason why the enemies don't shoot at you is that we don't feel like you have to dodge out of the way. So that kind of, again, resolves the not having the full 6 degrees of freedom, or for the room scale tracking, I should say. But yeah, I thought it was a super immersive mode. It felt really good, and I love that Toy-Con blaster, even though it took me freaking 3 hours to build. So
the only thing that's a bummer is that 3 of the end stages are of those 1 minute roundabout. For one time they're fun, but like for 3 times, I'd rather have seen 2 additional bosses.
Yep.
So I'll just say with the blaster game, it reminded me of Buzz Lightyear or the Toy Story ride at California Adventure.
Yes.
I enjoyed this one even more so. It's been a few years since I played them, but in my memory, this is better.
That's a great comparison. Yeah, you're on the track, you're just shooting enemies that can't hurt you, and you're going for a high score. Nailed it.
The fun thing now is once you beat all the stages, Quick Play opens up, and you get medals for each stage that you fully complete.
Oh, yeah, I need to go back and do that.
Yeah, so if you beat the boss quickly, you get a golden medal, and it feels so amazing to do. But interestingly enough, they have also certain missions that are more difficult. They ramped it up with a sort of an expert mode, so the enemy patterns are a bit different, and you need to take aware more of your surroundings.
Ooh.
And I think that's a cool additional touch to that entire package.
So real quick, let's take a quick break from our top 3. You're kind of touching on a good point there, Don, is just how much more replayable and gameplay there is in most of these modes compared to the other Labo kits, especially the first 2. Like the Variety Kit, each of those Toy-Cons was fun as a novelty for a few minutes, but that was pretty much it. There was no actual gameplay there. There were no objectives. There were just elaborate virtual toys that you played with a real-life instrument. The Robot Kit was a little bit more of a game. The problem was they spent hours and hours building this massive kit for a game that was literally 5 minutes long. That's it. After 5 minutes, that's it. You're done. There weren't any levels. The only other thing they had was a slight challenge mode, which didn't even offer that much as well.
I would simply call the Robot Kit not satisfying.
Oh, absolutely. Like the Variety Kit is definitely more satisfying than the Robot Kit. Even though they weren't proper games, even as little bite-sized experiences, it offered more value than the Robot Kit. Now, the Variety Kit is actually where Nintendo started fixing things. Because the Variety Kit, even though it only had really one main mode, it had a couple modes, but there's one main mode, you're on the island, a pretty big island, and you just drive around in 3 different vehicles, just doing different objectives. There's just a bunch of different stuff to do. So it was actually a pretty elaborate campaign, like a 6-hour campaign on top of a few other modes in addition to that. So I found myself that Labo VR found the perfect middle ground between the two, or maybe not perfect middle ground, but a good middle ground, where it didn't offer any single experience as elaborate as the giant island. However, each of these experiences are way more elaborate than the first 2 kits, where each one offers maybe between half an hour to an hour and a half of value, I found. With the...
how I would describe it is the simpleness of building of the Variety Kit with the accents of modes of how they handled the vehicle kit, but then even more elaborate.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say this now, but it's quite elaborate. But it reminded me of Game & Wario on Wii U, some of the modes. I mean, you got Pictionary in there, the Hippo game is a lot like Franck's, it's not just... And I played that game a lot for multiplayer. I mean, there is a lot of replay value there, and that's not even including if you want to dive into the programming mode for Labo.
Right.
Like fixing that pinball table, for instance.
Oh,
yeah, I've been working on that on a few games on there.
Ooh, I want to see these. Because when I first hopped into the editor, I found it to be intimidating. Now, I didn't have much time with it, so I only played around with it briefly just to see, kind of very loosely how it worked. So has it been much of an adjustment for you? Like, is it less intimidating once you start going through the lessons?
Yeah, it's very much less intimidating. There's still a lot of stuff you have to need to keep track of. And a good thing is for the 2D editing is to just use a Joy-Con on television. So I press in to do the pointer and do the object placing that way, so I know that everything is tight, and then remove it from the dock and see how it looks in the 3D escape.
Right.
So it will take a while for me to fully learn the ropes, and I wish there was a way to share the things that I was making and maybe collaborate with somebody else.
Yeah, that's the biggest disappointment, right? Because here it is so crazy to me that Nintendo basically included their version of Dreams, the PS4 game that's not even out yet, where you can build almost any kind of experience you want, that's been in development for years. Nintendo basically included that, albeit a simpler version, in Labo VR, but without the ability to share anything you make, except with people who use your very own Switch. So that's a downside, right? Like, there's not that kind of removes a huge incentive for learning the tools and building creations because no one else can play with them.
And I wish there was some sort of QR function, because it seems weird where they were very open with that stuff on 3DS and Wii U with, say, Pushmo, what have you, but you can't do it here. Like, I cannot even share a QR code with just allows you to import everything from the editor, or at least the 2D versions of it, into an editor.
Right.
Because that seems like very simple lines of code to me.
Well, maybe the QR code before, though, was an exact block pattern of the Pushmo level, so...
Oh, yeah?
It's probably, maybe there's just a bit more to it this time around, or you could have just been in a rush, and hopefully Nintendo will update Labo later to let us share different creations.
Yeah, but they never did it with the regular garage, though.
Yeah, but I mean, you couldn't. True, I mean, they could have, but that was more limited by your the physical things you did in real life, right? Whereas this is completely virtual. So I think part of the reason why they didn't is just because of content not suited for children, right? Because you can put text in there, you can make pretty much whatever designs you want. It'd be pretty easy to design the stage or a level or a game inappropriate for children.
Yeah, you want to keep it PG.
Exactly, but that also applies to Mario Maker. Granted, it's a little bit harder in that game, but you can also make stuff that's not family friendly either. So I really wish Nintendo had allowed some kind of way of sharing, whether having a vetting process or, I don't know, figuring out something, or even just letting us share with friends,
Yeah.
The problem I see without it not becoming PG is maybe using inappropriate text.
Right.
But because even that, all the objects are basically all the objects that you already find in the regular games. For example, if I wanted to make the enemies that are attacking me throughout the maze say the right Joy-Con, I could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically they only use objects that already are in the game, so there's nothing really potentially harmful in that. And even the actions, if you get hit, it doesn't do an elaborate kill animation or anything, it just drops you back at the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
So once again, the only thing that could be a problem would be maybe inappropriate text, but even that you can manage, I think.
Yeah, that's true. So I really hope they add an update, because I feel like this could be a really massive feature, and they kneecapped it out of the gate. So it's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
But it is cool that the VR Plaza is there, which has 64 games built in already from Nintendo, and some of them are pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I think that some of them are really neat concepts, and I like to look in the editor how they built them. So it gives me my ideas too. So that's why I keep learning and doing new stuff with that specific way, because I want to see how they build it. Especially say with the pinball game, how many parts were necessary to build that pinball game, and I go in there, it was like tons of them.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun on that pinball game. It was just, we felt like it made it slightly too easy to maybe encourage people to go in there and make it more like traditional pinball. Like the ball, you wouldn't lose a ball if it went down a certain way, for instance.
Yeah, it would just respawn, which is weird.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were trying to do with it. Like, if you wanted to make it harder, you could.
Yeah, I think that could be it. All right, let's go back to our top 3 real quick. Third favorite game. What was it, Don, for you?
Originally I was going to say Blaster, but you already took it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Ocean Camera.
Ooh, that's a good one. Why do you like Ocean Camera?
Like the sense of depth of 360 degrees around you, moving up and down to look in the environment and explore new places. I thought Ocean Camera was a lot of fun. It's a bit annoying that you only are restricted to 3 photos at a time.
Yeah.
And I wish that maybe along the lines that if you completed half of them, you would go to 5 or something. At the end of the day, I just had a relaxing time just going through a bunch of sessions and feeling completely satisfied with it.
It reminded me a little bit of Endless Ocean, but in VR. So it's a more chill mode, which is really cool. Except when that giant shark gets in your face, it can be a little bit terrifying.
Oh, yeah. I completed all the photos in Ocean Camera now, and it was so satisfying to do. Like, the last couple were a bit tricky, but at the end of the day, once you get all of them, it just feels so good to do.
It's surprisingly fun too to hunt down some of those like more secret ones, right? Like whether it's diving to the very bottom of the ocean and looking for what's down there, or looking for weird things in the background, or even surfacing to see what's up there. Like there's a lot more to it than it might seem at first.
My third favorite was the elephant painting game. It's not really
Doodle.
Doodle. It's not really a game unless you play in the more Pictionary-like mode with a timer and the other person guess. But that one worked really well just for, as Don was saying, sort of the depth. You draw in 3D. It's not just 2D. And showing how well the trunk worked for picking up objects and how versatile it was at, recording the different movements. I was pretty impressed by it. I mean, it looked exactly like, that sort of different Vive painting games that were out earlier. Like, it seemed to work just as well.
Yeah, again, it's crazy how well that silly trunk works. Like, it really does track remarkably precise, allowing you to draw in a 3D space. And I'll piggyback off your third favorite game, with my third favorite being the Marble Run game, which again uses the same basic trunk tools. Like it's the exact same input with the Toy-Con, but this time you're manipulating various devices that we kind of touched on earlier, whether it's springs, fans, tubes, platforms, or an anti-gravity device, which I love, by the way. And it's so fun to try. It's surprisingly fun to try and figure out how to get these balls through all these hoops or rings, and it gets just trickier and trickier with how they layer on mechanic after mechanic, and it just worked so well with you having this full one-to-one manipulation of these tools within this 3D world.
There's also tons of puzzles to play. There's far more than you might expect, because I expended maybe 20 to 30 puzzles. They're 70 or something?
And you can kind of even make your own with the free play mode using the parts you unlock by playing through the main game.
Yeah, I especially love how the later levels, especially you need to keep multiple rings in mind, and if you don't do that, then the whole route that you already made sort of falls apart.
Yeah.
So there are very little parts that you need to keep in mind. I think that makes it so incredibly neat.
It does, and I love I just love the physics too. Like they nailed the physics here, which is really what helps sell the illusion too. That ball reacts as you'd expect a ball to, basically, or at least convincingly enough that you buy into how it's reacting in this game. And it feels like there were times. Okay, so I'll be honest. There were a couple of times when I cheesed the puzzles where I was literally just able to balance a ball on a platform and just move it through the rings. But even that's tricky. You have to balance the ball perfectly so it doesn't fall off. And there's actually a specific challenge designed with that in mind called, I think it's called frustration or aggravation, where the entire series of puzzles is designed around balancing that ball delicately and not letting it fall off. I think it's this super tiny platform to play with. So
that kind of comes at a good time, because I was barely going to mention those puzzles and say that those were actually my favorite, because they're so deliberate and they actually force you to use the tracking well.
Yeah, but with how accurate it is, the only aggravation comes from yourself. You only have yourself to blame.
Yeah, speedrunners could play that game.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be fun to see. A bunch of speedrunners holding elephants to their face.
Yeah, in that one, I loved the cleverness of some of the puzzles at first, where you're kind of looking around, where are the pieces I need? Then you look down, and you see the shadows of them on the ground, oh, they're way up there.
Yeah.
And the other ones where the ball will come straight at your face, to call it the 3D, but it's a nice little touch instead of just having them all kind of 2D around you.
All right, well, we talked about our favorite experiences. Let's talk about our least favorite. And I think I know what Don's answer is. So let me start with Tom, just in case it's the same. Actually, I don't think it would be. But I don't think Tom played this one. So Tom, what is your least favorite mode? If you had to choose one, and that doesn't mean it's bad. Just which one was your least favorite? Would you say?
My least favorite. Oh, well, I remember being disappointed at the choosing the wrong bird game. That was the bird nest game. But for me, I guess a bit of disappointment was just. Can I say Labo VR video? I mean,
oh yeah, good. Yeah, whatever you want, that counts. Sure.
There's video in there. I felt each video only had one focus when they could have had it where you're actually trying to look around at many things to have more rewatchability of the videos. Like that's sort of the whole point of VR. So I was a bit disappointed at that. But I guess they're trying to focus on one thing and do a good job. And I'll admit the deer one gave me flashbacks of going to Nara and trying to feed the deer and having them attack at the cookies in my hands. So.
I love that one. Yeah, I love the deer one. That one's kind of magical. So.
It was actually shot on Nara, I think, because I recognized that location, but I'm not sure what farm. And then looked up, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it just reminded me of Nara, so it could have been a different spot with other deer.
All right, how about you, Don? What was your least favorite experience in?
You know what my least favorite is. Come on.
I agree with it. Right, I'll let you say it though. You can take credit for it.
House camera.
Yep, that's the worst, right?
There's so much randomness in that game. Like, come on now. Like, in comparison to Ocean Camera, which feels so involved and you do so much cool stuff with it. Just putting the slapdash house environment from the variety kit in there. Just putting a bunch of stamps in there that you have to move around. And focus a lot of, like, randomness. It just doesn't work all that well.
Yeah, it's like the polar opposite of the Ocean Camera, where the idea of that one is taking a different picture of almost every kind of like fish, wildlife there is down there. So you're looking for all kinds of objects, whereas the house is focused on just the one character for the most part, where the entire where it all depends on
fluffball.
Yeah, where it depends on just trying to either get it to look different or strike a different pose. So it involves a lot of trial and error, a lot of randomness, as you mentioned. It's just a very kind of like tedious at times experience. I mean, I don't hate it. Like, there are elements I do like. There's some really cute aspects. I love how when you zoom in on him, he'll start licking the screen, which is adorable, or your camera, I should say. But yeah, it's just like when if you're trying to complete it and trying to best it, which I think you probably should, because I think that's how you unlock a secret camera game, which, as far as I know, no one in the world has at all, including myself. I don't know. I mean, I only heard it exists. I don't even know what it is, but it sounds cool.
Same.
Yeah, so like, I want to get to it.
Between us, we spent way much time like figuring out house camera. It's driving us insane.
It is. I'm on the last 3 pictures now. I have literally no idea how to get to them. I have one more idea I'm gonna try after this video or after this discussion that I want to see if it works. If it doesn't, I'm plumb out of luck. I have no idea what to do. But yeah, so it's kind of just a frustrating experience where, I mean, if you don't care about beating it, then it's fine. Like, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's fun. Just like
it's fine.
Yeah, just to interact with the character and see what he does. By the way, if you haven't already, what you should do is go to night. If you use a switch on the wall, then use the same wall to pull out the mobile and have it put the character to sleep. And then just enjoy. That's a fun experience. Other than that, yeah, the rest of the experience I don't care about. But I want to beat it, Don, so I can unlock whatever comes after. So,
can you get the creature to eat you, so you like get to dive inside where the eyes are and find out about the anatomy?
I don't think you can. That'd be amazing though. So.
I'm surprised none of us in any old discussion outside of mentioning its name we discussed Hop Dodge.
Oh, we have to talk about Hop Dodge. It's kind of an easy one to overlook because because it is it's one of the shorter experiences here. Like once
it's a score tag game.
Exactly, bingo. So, but I really do enjoy it when I'm playing it. Like I love how well it works with the wind pedal. When you push on the wind pedal, it causes your frog to jump as if you leapt yourself, and then you feel the gush of air as you're flying through the sky. I really do enjoy that. I think for myself though, while I really enjoy the illusion of like jumping in the air and like looking down, you're high above and you feel the rushing air. Like I found it too easy. I literally beat the entire thing on my first try, with no problem at all. There is a challenge mode afterwards that's a lot harder because when you're going for the highest score and you can only take one hit. But yeah, there's just not a lot of replayability there, I think.
Yeah, I only had a ton of fun with the challenge mode after completing everything else. But that's only once in a while because all the other games have more stuff to do.
But again, I love how well it shows off the wind pedal. It feels so good.
Yeah, it's amazing for the wind pedal. Just that mode, I feel it needs a bit more to it. Like, it's fun for a few minutes and to get to the challenge mode and stuff. But I started, on hard mode or something? And I didn't even realize it at first. I was like, why is this so quick? It's like, oh, you're on hard. And it's like, oh, but, I beat it. So I just needed slightly more to be more long-lasting.
Right. So that is mostly Labo VR in a nutshell. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up about it specifically before we move on, or...
I thought the builds were actually really fun this time. Like
that's a good one.
The builds in the vehicle kit and especially the robot kit took way too long. This felt more like variety kit level where you could just build one and play games a little bit and move on to the next one.
Yeah, most of them are about an hour or so, hour and a half, except for the blaster, which took over 3 hours, which is probably that's by far the longest one, and it's a little like if you get the starter kit, it's probably a little bit rough to start with that as your very first Toy-Con. But I like that the rest are much easier, and even the blaster, like it's worth the effort with how fun the game is itself. But I agree with you. I think the build process itself is still magical. Like, I love seeing how all those cardboard and rubber bands come together into these elaborate contraptions that work. I will say real quick, this is the first time I've had a break, though. I actually had a breakage with the blaster. My niece, when she was playing, one of those rubber bands snapped, and I've never had that with any of the Labo kits. Now, luckily, this one, I guess Nintendo realized people are going to be playing with these kits or Toy-Cons a lot more than the others. It actually includes a bunch of extra rubber bands, and it does offer, there's a whole mode on how to repair your Labo kits. So I might actually do a video on it, me doing surgery on my Toy-Con to try and fix it. So I'll let you know how that goes.
I'm surprised to hear that. I totally thought the elephant would break first.
Yeah, you would think that, but no, that one's actually holding up surprisingly.
Yeah, they always include that, but I never used it. This might be the first time that ever anybody had to use that, because the blaster gets a lot of use. Let me put it that way, especially with the lot of pumping that you have to do. It seems that it should break at some point, but I'm glad it hasn't on my end yet.
With Labo VR, if you end up playing it a long time without too many breaks, which is what you're supposed to do, but I highly recommend armrests if you have very weak arms like I do.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a good point. That's definitely a fair point, because actually, here's something I want to talk about real quick. The pros and cons of Labo VR inherently. The pros. I love the fact that it's so simple to use once you build it. You just plug in your Switch into the goggles, into the Toy-Con, and you're good to go pretty much. There's no wires to worry about, you're not going to get hung up on anything. I love that you can technically use it anywhere. You don't have to use it just in front of your TV at this PSVR or in your living room at this Vive or whatever. So I love that about it. The downsides are, one, it's only 3 degrees of tracking, which again, I think it works well for the experience that they crafted here. But 2, is your arms get tired holding these devices, especially when I was trying to look for all those freaking pictures in the house game. So you do need breaks, you are going to feel it. And yeah, so that's one of the kind of cheap downsides of Labo VR, I think. But again, it's... Especially
the bird game, they will ring a bell after you play for, I say, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep.
And then they will force you to take a break.
Oh yeah, the game is reminding you constantly to take breaks. Every chance it gets to take a break. It reminds me of the Virtual Boy back in the day. How like every 15 minutes it's like, hey, take a break. But it's even more obnoxious here, I think. So
yeah.
But I still liked it all the same. And I do like too how easy it is to share it. Like you just take it off your head and hand it to a friend. You don't feel the same sense of isolation that you necessarily do with the other headsets, just because it's so easy to put on and off.
Oh, and how about this? It's cardboard, but it's not actually necessarily pressed to your face, or it's very little, so it's not all sweaty and gross when you hand it off to the next person. Good
point. Yeah, great point. Actually, that is a problem with other headsets where like if you play with like PSVR after a friend, you probably want to wipe it down first. But there's gonna be like a sweat-soaked liner inside there. It's kind of nasty.
Okay, what is the most satisfying thing? Toy-Con feeling that you had. For me, it was like using the zoom of the camera.
Oh, that feels really good. The clicking and how it corresponds perfectly to how you rotate the lens and how you really feel the depth when you zoom in all the way. So that's a good one. For me though, I gotta go with my old standby. Anything involving the wind pedal, specifically Bird Dash. I love how that feels. I love how it really does feel like you're flying through these narrow corridors, and it really does feel like an amusement park ride in your living room. I adored it.
Not a bad call at all.
Yeah.
Tom?
Oh, I was gonna agree with the camera too. Just the clicking as you're rotating it. I do love how the pedal works, but in terms of feel itself, the camera over the blaster for me.
I mean, the blaster is fun. Like the pushback once you shoot it is fun, but there's something nice about rotating the camera. The elephant is also really fun. It's just pressing the button.
They're all really fun.
Yeah,
much.
It's all really fun.
Yeah.
But for me, the camera and the elephant all the way.
Perfect. All right. Well, I want to start talking a little bit about the future of VR real quick. And first off, let's start off with the experiences that we know about for sure. Because I think one question a lot of people have is, how much of a platform is this really going to be? Because Nintendo themselves proved, despite just being a bunch of cardboard, this is a surprisingly legitimate VR device. And as part of this, Nintendo has already announced upcoming support for Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. So my first question is, how excited are you to try those experiences out in VR now that you've seen how well Labo VR already works?
I am excited to try the Mii levels in Odyssey. I'm not so sure how I feel about playing Breath of the Wild in VR.
That is the tricky thing. I agree. I love that Mario has a mode built specifically with it in mind. Breath of the Wild, though, is just adding like a viewfinder mode to the current game. So I wonder like how much depth you'll even really see, right? Because you're already playing the third-person view with a camera pulled back from Link. So I'm not sure how much depth will even play a factor. But then again, I actually did enjoy some of those Labo VR videos, and now I wonder if like playing Breath of the Wild might just look like those, in which case it could be a super cool experience. And at the very least, you are going to be enveloped within this world, right? Like you're only going to see Breath of the Wild, as opposed to a smaller by comparison TV.
But what I'm sort of worried about, especially with Breath of the Wild, is that you also need to control the game.
Right, that's another potential downside. But you're holding the thing to your face with the Joy-Cons there, so...
Yeah, I'm not so sure how I feel about it yet. With the Mario Odyssey experience, they specifically are making little boxed levels that keep in mind that the VR potential is limited by holding the goggles to your face. So while you're still doing very in-depth stuff, it is still a bit limited. So you collect the music notes, you collect some stuff along the way, and you get those levels done. It's not overly complicated in how they're designed. And I'm just a bit worried that Breath of the Wild might take that in a whole other direction.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild is a long game built around playing it for long periods of time. So I do wonder how that's going to work. What do you think, Tom? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, on that note, will the break warnings kind of take away from the game? Because you'll be getting those maybe every 15 minutes. It's like playing immersively in, like, whoa, take a break. Whoa, jeez.
I hope you hear, hey, listen, every time it wants to take a break. That needs to happen.
Just Navi. Yeah, that would be a great way around it. At least keep it in the game world.
No, it will be Zelda. It will be Zelda interrupting Hyrule Castle saying, Link, you need to take a break, Link.
The real world needs you.
All right, I would be down for that. That could be kind of cute, actually. That'd be really funny.
Well, so I would be more looking forward to the 3 Mario levels, but keep in mind with Zelda, like it's probably going to be similar to the original Lucky's Tale, where you actually get a lot closer to the action. It's kind of neat looking around at something, even though it's designed maybe almost for a TV, but with the VR goggles being able to turn around and look quickly. And, it's a difference, as I was saying, between the different handheld and the VR goggles mode. It's sort of like the difference between being a spectator and being there. So you'll be that much closer to the action. I'm interested to see if they pull it off. I mean, they pleasantly surprised me with Labo VR, so I'm guessing it's going to be possible with those 2 titles as well.
Good point. I agree with all that. Like, I'm no matter what concerns I may have, I'm excited to try both of them. I want to see them both in VR. Like, real quick, let's take a quick break. How nuts is it that we're discussing Nintendo doing VR? Like, just a month ago, we had no idea about any of this besides rumors, and now they've gone, now they're giving support for the 2 biggest Switch games, giving VR support? How nuts is that?
I mean, they could take it a step further and make more Switch games support it.
Do we think this is going to be a legitimate platform? do you think that Nintendo will add even more support for other games? Because like adding Labo support for existing games isn't technically new. They did it for the 2 other main kits with Mario Kart, only Mario Kart. So this time we're already getting at least one more experience than that. But do you think this is it, or do you think they'll add even more? And do you think they might open up to third parties?
I think not every game will work in this specific context, but I think like a game like Mario Kart, like we're mentioning multiple times now, is a game that could work with this.
Oh,
because the scope of it is still limited, and the way you control the game wouldn't make it overly complicated.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Not only is there already a Mario Kart VR game, like in arcades, but there was even a first-person 3D mode on 3DS too. So yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep, and I certainly hope they open it up to more titles. This might just be an experimental test, but by putting Mario and Zelda first, that kind of shows they're pretty serious about it and trying to get more attention. Because even though we all know Labo VR is good, it wasn't so clear at first, but having Mario and Zelda there made it more enticing for people to pick up the kit. I'm only disappointed that ARMS probably can't have VR. Dude, you'd have to hold up the Labo to your face while maybe just punching with one hand, or they would need a strap for it. That's one I'd love in VR.
ARMS has button control, so they could still technically do that.
Yeah, okay. That's true. Well, but it is. I mean, part of the game, part of the appeal for me was like the arm movement, right? That will work so well in VR. So it is a little bit of a bummer that it wouldn't work as well with standard controls. But yeah, I mean, I really hope Nintendo like adds more VR experiences. I think I said before, like a push mode seems like a perfect eShop game for this. And again, like I would love if they opened up to third parties. Like Thumper is such a cool experience on PSVR. It's on Switch, and if Breath of the Wild can run in VR, I'm sure Thumper could as well. So I would love if they opened up to third parties and let them go nuts with Labo VR they wanted to.
Yeah, glad you mentioned Thumper. Here's one. How about Tetris 360? Instead of Tetris 99, you're totally surrounded by different people going against you.
Oh my god, that'd be nuts!
I remember the various modes in that 3DS Tetris game.
Yeah.
Where they had like this first-person mode where the blocks would drop in the depth of the 3D. I could see that working with VR.
Yeah.
I wonder how many third-party games will also make use of the VR function out since it's there. Because we had a few games scattered over the place that used actually the various Toy-Con of the variety kit.
Yeah.
Like the motorcycle and the piano. Like third parties were very keen on that. So there might be a bunch of smaller games that see the VR and see how cheap it is, especially with the starter kit, and might include it in their game.
Right. Well, I hope you're right, Don. I hope that's the case, because Labo VR by far has the most potential of any Labo kit, because it goes beyond just Labo. It's a legitimate VR device. And I really hope this is just the beginning of what could be more VR experiences from Nintendo.
I'm going to jump ahead 4 or 5 years and imagine Metroid Prime, but using the camera and the little slow motion thing, but to scan different parts of the level.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Or even Virtual Boy games. Remake those for Labo VR. So,
yeah.
Wario Land VR.
That game needs to be played by more people, including myself. I barely played it originally.
That's the only Virtual Boy game I've ever played in my entire life, and I really loved it.
Yep. There you go, Tom. Duck Hunt VR. There already is a game called, I think, Duck Season. That's pretty well known on Vive. But I would love for Nintendo to give their own goofy take on Duck Hunt. Their own property, and give us a full 360 degrees to aim with a blaster. That'd be so fun, I think.
I would be down for that.
Heck, yeah, you would. All right, guys. Any final thoughts about Labo VR before we wrap it up here?
We said our piece, basically. I would say that, once again, this is the best Labo kit by a mile, and the best Labo that money can buy. It's the focus of the build of the variety kit with the depth and breadth of what a Nintendo game should be.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you do not have several hundreds of dollars burning a hole in your pocket, Labo VR is an excellent way to try out VR and not also need like a football field to play it.
Bingo. It's always a perk. All right, so I think we're about done here. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Don, do you want to tell people where they can find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Nintendan. That's NENTNDAAN.
Perfect. And how about you, Tom?
Well, you can find Captain Falcon at various GameXplain thumbnails. Just search for him.
Nice. And people can also follow you on Twitter, though, if they wanted, right?
Yeah, at Ragin Tombo, just one G, so RAGIN Tombo, TOMBO.
Perfect. Drop that middle letter like GameXplain did, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. And of course, you can find links to all those in the description below, as well as links to our own Twitter and Facebook pages at GameXplain, which you can also find below. And with that, we're about done here, so thank you so much for watching, and of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Labo VR, because we're going to have even more, and we're not done yet, including cover Mario and Zelda when they get added, and everything else Nintendo Switch as well. We'll catch you later. Bye.